Minho walked into the great hall of the Galactic Council for the last time. His black shoes made soft sounds on the smooth floor. The huge room was full of alien beings from 47 different worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like walking plants. They all sat in their special chairs talking in their own languages. The human ambassador carried only a small data pad in his hand. He had been coming to this place for 10 years. Today would be different. Today would be the end. Chancellor Vex, a tall creature with purple skin and 4 arms, looked down at Minho from the high platform. His voice was cold and bored. The council will now hear from the human representative. Make it quick. We have important matters to discuss. Minho stood in the center of the room. All around him, alien eyes stared. Some looked curious. Most looked like they did not care. He had seen these same looks for 40 years. Ever since humans first joined the galactic community, they had been treated like children, like servants, like things that were useful but not important. Honored Council, Minho said. His voice was calm and clear. The human species formally withdraws from all galactic affairs, effective immediately. We thank you for your time. He placed the data pad on the small table in front of him. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. The hall became very quiet. Then the noise started. Aliens began talking to each other in excited voices. Some laughed, some seemed confused. Chancellor Vex hit his gavel 3 times. Wait, he called. That cannot be all. Where is your long speech? Where are your demands, your threats? Minho stopped at the door but did not turn around. There are no demands, no threats. We are simply leaving. But why? Asked Counselor Theron, a being that looked like a giant bird. You have good jobs here. You maintain our systems. You build our stations. We did those things because we thought we were partners, Minho said. We were wrong. He walked out of the hall. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. In the HFY hallway, Ji-Wan was waiting. She was the head of all human diplomats in the galaxy. Her face was serious but not sad. How did they take it? She asked. Like we expected, Minho said. They think we are making a mistake. They walked together toward the transport station. All around them, the space station was busy with activity. Alien workers moved cargo. Ships came and went. Everything looked normal. But Minho knew that things were already changing. The evacuation ships are ready, Ji-Wan said. All human colonies have been contacted. The last transport leaves in 6 hours. Minho nodded. They had been planning this for 3 years, ever since the council voted to deny humans full membership for the 5th time. Ever since they were told that humans were too young and too aggressive to have a real voice in galactic politics. The humans had tried to be patient. They had tried to prove themselves. They had built half the space stations in council territory. They had fixed problems that other species could not solve. They had prevented wars and helped make peace. But it was never enough. At the transport station, they met Taehyun. He was the chief engineer for all human projects in council space. His face was tired but determined. The shutdown is going well, he told them. All our people are packing up. We are taking our equipment with us. What about the systems we built? Ji-Wan asked. Taehyun smiled for the first time in days. We are leaving them running, for now, but without us to maintain them. He did not need to finish the sentence. They boarded the transport ship. As it lifted off from the station, Minho looked out the window. He could see the great council building getting smaller below them. Soon it was just a tiny light in the darkness of space. Do you think they will try to stop us? Ji-Wan asked. With what? Taehyun laughed. Half their security systems were designed by humans. Their communication networks run on our software. They cannot even call for help without using something we built. The transport ship joined a fleet of other vessels. Human ships from every corner of the galaxy were gathering at the edge of council space. There were colony ships, cargo vessels, research stations, and mining platforms. Everything that humans had built in 40 years of galactic citizenship. On the flagship, Admiral Kyung was coordinating the departure. He was an old man who had spent his whole life in space. He had hoped to die as a citizen of the galaxy. Now, he would die as something else. All ships report ready, he announced over the communication system. We are going home. But home was not Earth. Earth was too close to Council space. Home was somewhere new, somewhere far away, somewhere the Council would never find them. As the human fleet began to move, Minho thought about the aliens they were leaving behind. Some of them were good people, some had even been friends, but the system was broken. The Council saw humans as tools, not as equals. That would never change. Back on the Council station, Chancellor Vex was reading the data pad that Minho had left behind. It contained only 2 sentences. Humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs. We wish you well. That is it? Counselor Theron asked. No list of complaints? No ultimatum? Apparently not, Vex said. He seemed confused. Most species made long speeches when they were angry. They made demands. They threatened war. Humans just left. Good riddance, said Counselor Morax, a creature that looked like a walking rock. We can finally get some real work done without their constant questions and suggestions. Several other counselors agreed. Humans were always pointing out problems, always suggesting improvements, always asking why and what if. It would be peaceful without them. Only one voice spoke against the celebration. Old Zephyrin was the oldest member of the council. He had seen many species come and go. His people were among the first to join the galactic community 1,000 years ago. I think we may regret this, he said in his quiet voice. Humans were different from other species. They saw connections that we missed. They solved problems that we did not know existed. They were laborers, Chancellor Vex said. Useful laborers, but still just laborers. We can train others to do their jobs. Zephyrin said nothing more, but he made a mental note to watch carefully in the coming days. He had a feeling that they were all about to learn something important about humans, something they should have learned a long time ago. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace. They left behind empty stations, quiet construction sites, and systems that still worked perfectly. For now. In the Great Hall of the Council, the meeting continued. They discussed trade agreements and border disputes. They planned new projects and made new laws. Everything seemed normal. But somewhere in the back of Zephyrin's mind, a small voice was asking a question. If humans were just laborers, why did it suddenly feel like something very important had just walked out the door? The galaxy was about to find out. 3 weeks after the humans left, the first problem started. So-Yung had been gone for 21 days when the communication network began to fail. She had been the chief maintenance officer for the galactic communication system. Every day, for 15 years, she had checked thousands of relay stations across the galaxy. She had fixed problems before they became big problems. She had updated software and replaced broken parts. Now her office was empty. The tools were gone. The maintenance schedules were abandoned. On Nexus Prime, the main communication hub started showing error messages. The night shift operator, a Keltharian named Vorth, stared at the red lights on his control panel. He had never seen so many warnings before. Command Center, we have multiple failures in sectors 7 through 12, he reported. Can you fix them? Asked his supervisor. Vorth looked at the complex diagnostic screen. The human woman So-Yung had always made it look easy. She would type a few commands and the problems would disappear. But the commands were written in human. Technical language. Vorth could not understand most of it. I need help, he admitted. The supervisor sent a repair team to the affected sectors. But when they arrived at the relay stations, they found systems that were more complicated than they had expected. The human engineers had not just maintained the original equipment, they had improved it. They had added new features and safety systems. They had created connections between different parts that no one else understood. The repair team tried to follow the maintenance manual, but the manual was written for the old system. The new system was different, it was better, but it was also more complex. We need the humans who built this, the team leader reported back. We cannot figure out how it works. But the humans were gone. and they were not answering any messages. On the trading world of Kalos, Do-hyun's absence was causing different problems. He had been the architect who designed the new spaceport terminal. The building was beautiful and efficient. It could handle 1 million passengers every day. But now there were issues that no one had noticed before. The environmental systems were acting strangely. The temperature in the main hall kept changing. Sometimes it was too hot for the cold-blooded species. Sometimes it was too cold for the warm-blooded species. The local engineers could not find the problem. The human architect left detailed plans, said Chief Engineer Kolax. We should be able to figure this out. But when they looked at the plans, they found something unexpected. The building was not just one system. It was dozens of systems all working together. The temperature control was connected to the air recycling system. The air recycling system was connected to the lighting system. The lighting system was connected to the power distribution system. It was like a giant puzzle where every piece affected every other piece. And Do-hyun had been the only one who understood how all the pieces fit together. He did not just design a building, Kolax said slowly. He designed a living organism. The problems were getting worse. Passengers were complaining. Some were getting sick from the bad air. Others were too uncomfortable to stay in the terminal for long. On the cargo world of Hestia, Hyunwoo's disappearance was causing chaos in the shipping industry. He had been the logistics coordinator for interspecies trade. He had managed shipping schedules for 300 different worlds. He had made sure that food shipments arrived before the food spoiled. He had coordinated mining operations with factory schedules. He had balanced supply and demand across thousands of light years. The shipping companies thought they could replace him easily. Logistics was just about moving things from one place to another, right? How hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. Without Hyunwoo's coordination, ships were arriving at the wrong times. Cargo docks were either empty or overcrowded. Food shipments were spoiling because refrigeration ships were being used for other cargo. Mining equipment was sitting in warehouses while mines waited for supplies. This is impossible, said Freight Manager Nexus. How did one human manage all of this? The answer was in Hyunwoo's office computer, but when they tried to access his files, they found something surprising. The human had not just kept schedules. He had created a living model of the entire galactic's economy. He had tracked thousands of variables, weather patterns that affected farming, political situations that affected mining, seasonal demands that affected manufacturing. His computer system had been making thousands of tiny adjustments every day. It had been predicting problems weeks before they happened. It had been balancing the needs of hundreds of species with different biology, different cultures, and different economic systems. He was not just moving cargo, Nexus realized. He was conducting an orchestra. The council started getting reports from across the galaxy. Systems were failing, projects were stalling, simple tasks were becoming complicated. Chancellor Vex called an emergency meeting. The Great Hall was full of worried counselors. These are temporary problems, he announced. We will hire new workers. We will train them to do the jobs that humans were doing. What if we cannot? Asked Counselor Theron. Of course we can, Vex said. Humans are not special. They are just good with tools and computers. But Zephyrin was not convinced. He had been doing his own investigation. What he found was disturbing. The humans had not just been workers. They had been problem solvers. They had been bridge builders. They had been the invisible glue that held galactic civilization together. Every major system in Council space had human fingerprints on it, not because humans had taken over, but because humans had been asked to help. Again and again, when other species could not solve a problem, they had called the humans. The humans had always said yes. They had fixed the problems and then moved on to the next one. They had never asked for credit. They had never demanded payment. They had just helped. And now they were gone. Zephyrin looked at his growing list of human contributions. The list was getting longer every day. Communication networks, transportation systems, environmental controls, trade coordination, construction projects, medical research, educational programs. How did we not see this? He asked himself. The answer was simple but painful. They had not seen it because they had not wanted to see it. They had told themselves that humans were just workers, just laborers, just useful tools. It was easier to think that way. It meant they did not have to treat humans as equals. It meant they did not have to share power. It meant they could keep their comfortable positions at the top of the galactic hierarchy. But now the truth was becoming clear. The humans had not been tools. They had been partners. They had been the most important partners of all. In his private office, Zephyrin tried to contact the human diplomatic mission, but the communication went nowhere. The human embassy was empty. The human colonies had gone silent. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. They are still out there, he told himself. They have to be. But where? And would they ever come back? On the other side of the galaxy, the human fleet was settling into their new home. It was a cluster of star systems far from council space, far from the politics and prejudice that had made their lives difficult. Minho stood on the observation deck of the main colony ship. He was looking at their new sun. It was smaller than Earth's sun, but it was warm and bright. It felt like hope. Any regrets? Asked Jiwon. Minho thought about the question. He thought about the friends they had left behind. He thought about the projects they had abandoned. He thought about the species that might suffer because humans were no longer there to help. Some, he admitted. But we gave them 40 years. We tried everything we could think of. It was never enough. Jiwon nodded. She understood. Maybe they will learn from this. Maybe, Minho said. But that is their choice to make. Behind them, the human colony ships were beginning their work. They were building new homes, new cities, new lives. They were free now, free to make their own choices, free to build their own future. In council space, the problems were getting worse. But the humans did not know that yet. They were too busy, building something new, something better, something that the council might never understand. 2 months after the humans left, the agricultural world of Demeter faced its first crisis. The Keltharian farmers had been growing Zephyr grain for over a century. It was a stable crop that fed billions across the galaxy. The grain grew well, in Demeter's red soil, and survived the planet's harsh weather. The harvest had been good for decades. But this season, something was wrong. The plants are dying, reported farm manager Kelox. He stood in a field where green shoots should have been growing tall. Instead, the plants were brown and twisted. The leaves were covered with black spots. It is the blight disease, said Dr. Vorth, the planet's chief botanist. We have seen it before, but never this bad. The blight disease was an old enemy. It attacked grain crops during wet seasons. But in the past, it had never been a serious problem. The human scientist Wanho had developed treatments that kept the disease under control. Wanho had come to Demeter 15 years ago. He had studied the soil, the weather, and the plant diseases. He had created new varieties of grain that were stronger and healthier. He had trained the local farmers to recognize problems early and treat them quickly. But Wanho was gone now, and with him went all his knowledge. We still have his research notes, Dr. Vorth said. We can follow his methods. They tried. They used the same chemicals that Wanho had recommended. They planted the same resistant grain varieties. They followed his procedures exactly. It did not work. The disease spread faster than ever before. It jumped from field to field, destroying everything in its path. The chemicals that had worked for Wanho did nothing to stop it. I do not understand, Dr. Vorth said. We are doing everything the same way. But they were not doing everything the same way. They did not know about the tiny changes that Wanho had made each season. They did not know how he adjusted his treatments based on weather patterns and soil conditions. They did not know about the early warning signs that he watched for. Wanho had not just followed a set of rules. He had developed an understanding of the complex relationship between plants, soil, weather, and disease. He had adapted his methods constantly, making small changes that prevented big problems. The local scientists had only seen the final results. They had not understood the thinking behind those results. Within 3 weeks, half the grain crop on Demeter was destroyed. Food shipments to 12 worlds were cancelled. Panic buying started on several agricultural markets. On the medical research, Station Asclepius, Dr. Neon's absence was causing a different kind of crisis. The station was home to the galaxy's leading experts on interspecies medicine. It was a difficult field because different species had completely different biology. What helped one species might kill another. What was food for some was poison for others. Dr. Neon had been the station's specialist in cross-species diseases. She studied illnesses that could jump from one species to another. These diseases were rare, but they were extremely dangerous when they appeared. 3 months ago, she had been working on a treatment for Rigel fever. It was a disease that affected both Keltharians and Vorthax. Without treatment, it was fatal within days. But with Neon's medicine, patients recovered completely. The research station had a supply of her treatment, enough for maybe 1,000 patients. It should have been enough to last for years. But then the outbreak started. It began on a trading station near the Keltharian border. A cargo ship arrived from the Outer Rim. Several crew members were sick with Rigel fever. The disease spread quickly through the station's population. "We need more of Dr. Neon's treatment," reported Station Medical Officer Thrak. "We are running out." The medical research station tried to make more of the medicine. They had Neon's formulas. They had her laboratory equipment. They had her research notes, but when they tried to create the treatment, it did not work. The medicine they made was too weak. Patients who took it got sicker instead of better. "The formula must be wrong," said Dr. Korvax, the station's new chief researcher. But the formula was not wrong. The problem was more subtle. Neon had never written down all of her knowledge. She had not recorded the small adjustments she made during the creation process. She had not explained how to tell when the mixture was exactly right. Like many experts, she had developed an intuitive understanding of her work. She could sense when something was not quite correct. She could make tiny changes that improved the final result. The other doctors did not have that intuition. They only had the written instructions, and the written instructions were not enough. The Rigel fever outbreak spread to 3 more stations. Hundreds of people got sick. Dozens died. The council declared a medical emergency, but there was little they could do. On the peaceful world of Harmony, the absence of human philosopher Sung Hoon was causing problems that no one had expected. Harmony was supposed to be a model of interspecies cooperation. Representatives from different worlds came, there to resolve disputes peacefully. It was the place where the galaxy's most difficult arguments were settled through discussion instead of war. For 20 years, Sung Hoon had been one of the mediators. He had helped different species understand each other. He had found ways to resolve conflicts that seemed impossible to solve. His specialty was ethical disputes, questions about what was right and wrong. Different species had different ideas about morality. What was acceptable behavior for one group might be horrible for another. Sung Hoon had studied all the different ethical systems in the galaxy. He had found common ground between very different ways of thinking. He had created frameworks that allowed different species to work together despite their differences. But now he was gone, and the frameworks he had created were being tested. The crisis started with a simple trade dispute. The Vorthax wanted to buy mining rights from the Therans. The Therans were willing to sell. It should have been an easy agreement. But there was a problem. The mining operation would affect a sacred site that was important to the Therans. According to Vorthak law, business interests came first. According to Theran tradition, sacred sites could never be disturbed. In the past, Sung Hoon would have found a solution. He would have helped both sides understand each other's values. He would have found a compromise that respected both business needs and religious traditions. But the new mediators did not have his skills. They tried to apply standard legal procedures. They looked for precedents in galactic law. They followed the rulebook exactly. It did not work. The dispute got worse instead of better. Both sides became angry and frustrated. They accused each other of being unreasonable. "This should be simple," said mediator Corinth. "Either the contract is legal or it is not." But that was exactly the wrong approach. Sung-hoon had understood that legal rules were not enough. Some problems required wisdom, not just law. They required an understanding of different cultures and different ways of thinking. The Vorthak-Theron dispute escalated into a diplomatic crisis. Both species threatened to withdraw from the Harmony Accords. Other trade agreements began to unravel as confidence in the mediation system collapsed. Across the galaxy, similar problems were appearing everywhere. Agricultural systems were failing. Medical treatments were running out. Diplomatic agreements were breaking down. The council called emergency session after emergency session. They formed committees to study the problems. They hired consultants to find solutions. They threw money and resources at every crisis. Nothing worked. "We need to contact the humans," Councillor Theron said during one heated debate. "Absolutely not," Chancellor Vex replied. "We will not go begging to a species that abandoned their responsibilities." "What if they were right to leave?" asked Zephyrin. The hall became very quiet. It was a dangerous question. If the humans were right to leave, that meant the council was wrong to let them go. It meant they had made a terrible mistake. "The humans were servants," Vex said firmly. "Useful servants, but still servants. We can replace them, but they could not replace them." That was becoming more obvious every day. Zephyrin had been studying human contributions for weeks. His research was revealing something extraordinary. The humans had not just been workers or servants. They had been the invisible foundation of galactic civilization. They had solved problems that other species did not even recognize as problems. They had prevented crises before they started. They had built connections between different parts of the galaxy that made everything work better. And they had done it all without asking for credit or recognition. They had just quietly made things better, one small improvement at a time. Now they were gone. And the galaxy was learning what it meant to live without them. "We need to find them," Zephyrin said to himself, "before it is too late." But where had they gone? And would they even want to help after the way they had been treated? In the human colony ships, life was getting better every day. The new worlds were beautiful and rich with resources. The colonies were growing quickly. Children were being born who would never know what it was like to be treated as second-class citizens. Minho stood in the hydroponics bay of the main agricultural ship. The plants here were thriving, green and healthy and strong. Human farmers were developing new varieties of food crops. Human scientists were studying the soil and weather of their new worlds. Everything was working perfectly, because the humans were finally free to do what they did best. 6 months after the humans left, the galaxy was falling apart. Zephyrin sat in his private office, surrounded by reports. Each report told the same story: systems failing, conflicts escalating, problems getting worse. The stack of papers on his desk had grown taller every day for weeks. He picked up the latest report from the Outer Rim territories. It was from Seokjin's former district. Seokjin had been the human ambassador to 12 different worlds in that region. He had spent 15 years helping them work together on trade agreements, border disputes, and resource sharing. The report was 3 pages of bad news. The Korvath system was at war with the Nexus colony over water rights. The Theron Mining Consortium had stopped all operations because of labor disputes. The Vorthak trading fleet was refusing to deliver food to 3 different worlds because of unpaid debts. How did this happen so fast? Zephyrin wondered. The answer was in Seokjin's files. Zephyrin had been studying them for weeks, trying to understand how one human had managed to keep peace in such a difficult region. Seokjin had not just been an ambassador. He had been a counselor, a mediator, a problem solver, and sometimes even a friend. He had understood the cultural differences between species that made cooperation difficult. He had found creative solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve. The water rights dispute was a good example. The Korvath system had 3 planets, but only one had clean water. The Nexus colony needed water for their growing population. Both groups had legal claims to the water supply. Most diplomats would have tried to find a legal solution. They would have looked at contracts and territorial agreements. They would have tried to decide who had the stronger claim. Seokjin had done something different. He had studied the biology and culture of both species. He had learned that Korvaths needed very pure water, but Nexus colonists could use water that was less clean. He had found a way to filter the water that gave both groups what they needed. The solution had worked for 8 years, but the water treatment system required constant maintenance and adjustment. When Seokjin left, there was no one who understood how it worked. The system broke down, and the old dispute came back. Now there were ships shooting at each other over the same water that had been shared peacefully for almost a decade. Zephyrin put down the report and picked up another one. This one was about the terraforming project on New Garden. Yuna had been in charge of that project for 12 years. Terraforming was the process of changing a planet to make it suitable for life. It was incredibly difficult and complicated. Many species had tried it. Most had failed, but Yuna had succeeded. New Garden was now home to 3 million people from 6 different species. The planet had clean air, fertile soil, and stable weather. It was considered one of the greatest terraforming achievements in galactic history. The report explained that New Garden was dying. The problem had started small. Some plants were growing too fast, others were not growing at all. The weather patterns were becoming unpredictable. The soil chemistry was changing in ways that nobody understood. The ecosystem is collapsing, the report said. Without intervention, the planet will be uninhabitable within 2 years. The local scientists had tried to fix the problems. They had studied Yuna's research files. They had followed her procedures exactly. But terraforming was not just about following procedures. It was about understanding the complex relationships between thousands of different factors. Yuna had spent years learning how to balance atmospheric composition, soil chemistry, plant genetics, weather patterns, and biological cycles. She had developed an intuitive understanding of how all these systems work together. The other scientists had her data, but they did not have her insight. They could see what she had done, but they could not understand why she had done it. When problems arose, they did not know how to adapt her solutions to new situations. 3 million people were going to lose their homes because one human woman was no longer there to maintain the delicate balance that made their world livable. Zephyrin picked up the next report, and the next one, and the next one. Each one told a similar story. Humans had been involved in every major project, every important agreement, every crucial system in the galaxy, and their absence was causing everything to break down. On the industrial world of Forge, Human Crisis Coordinator Dongyuk had prevented 3 potential disasters in the past 5 years. He had organized responses to a chemical plant explosion, a reactor meltdown, and a massive earthquake. His emergency protocols had saved millions of lives. Now Forge was facing a new crisis, a massive storm that was threatening the main industrial complex. The local authorities tried to follow Donghyuk's emergency procedures. But the procedures were written for different types of disasters. They did not know how to adapt them to the current situation. The storm hit the industrial complex 3 days later. 17 factories were destroyed. Thousands of workers were injured. The economic damage would take years to repair. "We should have evacuated the whole complex," said Emergency Coordinator Thax. "But we did not know how to organize such a large evacuation." Donghyuk would have known. He had planned evacuation procedures for every possible scenario. But his plans were complex and required someone with his experience to implement them. Without him, the authorities had just hoped for the best. Across the galaxy, hope was not enough. The communication networks were failing more often. The trade routes were becoming unreliable. Medical supplies were running short. Diplomatic agreements were falling apart. And worst of all, the conflicts were getting bigger. The war between the Korvath system and Nexus colony had spread to neighboring systems. Other species were choosing sides. What had started as a dispute over water rights was becoming a regional war. The Keltharian Chancellor was mobilizing his fleet. The Vorthak Trading Consortium was refusing to do business with several worlds. The Theran Mining Guild had shut down operations in 12 systems. "We are seeing the collapse of galactic civilization," Zephyrin wrote in his private notes. "And it all started when we lost the humans." Chancellor Vex refused to admit that the humans had been important. In every council meeting, he insisted that the problems were temporary. We just need to train more workers, he said. We need better coordination between our departments. But the other counselors were starting to have doubts. Maybe we made a mistake, Counselor Theron said during one heated debate. Maybe we should try to contact the humans. Never, Vex replied. We will not beg for help from a species that abandoned us. They did not abandon us, Zephyrin said quietly. We drove them away. The hall became silent. It was the first time anyone had said it so directly. We treated them like servants for 40 years, Zephyrin continued. We gave them all the difficult jobs, but none of the respect. We used their skills, but denied them a voice in decisions. We took everything they offered and gave nothing back. They were paid for their work, Vex said. Money is not enough, Zephyrin replied. They wanted to be partners. They wanted to be equals. They wanted to help build a better galaxy. Instead, we made them feel like outsiders. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors agreed with Zephyrin. Others supported Vex. But the arguments did not matter. The damage was already done. The humans were gone, and they were not coming back. At least that was what everyone thought. In the human colonies, the debates were just as intense. We have to help them, said Dr. Minji. She had been monitoring the galactic news feeds. The reports of system failures and conflicts were getting worse every day. People are dying because we are not there. People were dying when we were there too, replied Admiral Kyung. Remember the mining accident on Zarian? We sent rescue teams immediately. We saved hundreds of lives. But did the council thank us? Did they give us any credit? No. They said it was our job. The human leadership was split. Some wanted to return and help. Others wanted to stay away and let the galaxy learn its lesson. Some wanted to offer limited assistance. Others wanted to make demands before helping anyone. What do you think? Jiwan asked Minho. They were standing on the observation deck of the main colony ship. Through the window they could see their new home, beautiful worlds with blue skies and green forests, clean cities with happy people, a growing civilization that was everything the old galaxy could have been. I think we are better off here, Minho said. We have built something good, something clean, something where humans are valued and respected. But what about our responsibility to help others? It was the question that kept Minho awake at night. Humans were natural helpers. They could not stand to see suffering and do nothing about it. It was who they were. But they had tried to help for 40 years. They had given everything they had, and it had never been enough. Maybe our responsibility now is to show the galaxy what they could have had, Minho said. Maybe our responsibility is to build something so much better that they finally understand what they lost. And if they never understand? Minho looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, the galactic civilization was tearing itself apart. Species that had lived in peace for decades were going to war. Systems that had worked for centuries were breaking down. Then we will have to live with that, he said. We cannot force them to value us. We cannot make them treat us as equals. 1 year after the humans left, Zephyrin stood alone in the great hall of the Galactic Council. The huge room that had once been full of representatives from 47 worlds now held only 12. 17 species had withdrawn from galactic affairs completely. They had taken their ships and gone home to their own worlds. They had decided that the galaxy was too dangerous and chaotic to be part of anymore. 10 more species were fighting wars with each other. The water rights conflict had spread across half the galaxy. Trade disputes had become shooting wars. Border disagreements had turned into territorial invasions. The remaining species were barely holding on. Their systems were failing. Their economies were collapsing. Their people were afraid and angry. Zephyrin had become the acting chancellor after Vex resigned in disgrace. It was not a job he had wanted. But someone had to try to hold the galaxy together. Any word from the Outer Rim Patrol? He asked his aide, a young Theron named Corville. Nothing good, Corville replied. The sensors are detecting massive energy signatures beyond the galactic boundary. Whatever is coming, it is big. Zephyrin nodded grimly. The threat from outside the galaxy was getting closer every day. Long-range sensors showed a vast fleet of unknown ships approaching. They would reach Council space in less than 6 months. Have we heard anything from the humans? No, sir. All our messages have gone unanswered. For 12 months, the Council had tried to contact humanity. They had sent diplomatic messages, emergency broadcasts, even personal appeals from individual counselors. The humans had not responded to any of them. It was as if they had simply vanished from the universe. But Zephyrin knew they were still out there. Human ships had been spotted at the edge of several star systems, always far away, always watching, never making contact. They were studying the galaxy's collapse from a safe distance. Sir, Corval said, there is something else. We just received a transmission. From whom? From Ambassador Minho. Zephyrin felt his heart skip a beat. After 12 months of silence, the humans were finally talking. Put it through to my private office, he said. A few minutes later, Zephyrin was sitting alone, looking at a communication screen. The image was clear and sharp. Minho looked exactly the same as he had a year ago. Calm, serious, professional. Counselor Zephyrin, Minho said. I am speaking as a representative of the human coalition. We have been monitoring the situation in Council space. Ambassador Minho, Zephyrin replied. Thank you for responding. We need your help. I know, Minho said. We have seen the reports. Systems failing, wars breaking out, civilizations collapsing. Can you help us? Will you come back? Minho was quiet for a long moment. The human species has moved beyond the need for galactic civilization, he said finally. We have learned to be self-sufficient. We have built new homes far from the conflicts and politics of the Council worlds. But people are dying, Zephyrin said. Billions of people. Without human expertise, we cannot maintain the systems that keep our worlds habitable. You had 40 years to learn, Minho replied. You chose not to. The words were not angry or bitter. They were just sad. Minho sounded like someone who had given up hope a long time ago. We made mistakes, Zephyrin admitted. We were wrong about humans. We were wrong about everything. Yes, Minho said. You were. Is there nothing we can do? No way to make this right? Minho looked directly at the camera. There is something you should know. The threat approaching your galaxy is real. Our long-range sensors detected it 3 years ago. We tried to warn the Council then. Zephyrin felt cold. 3 years ago, but we never received any warnings. You received them, Minho said. But you dismissed them as human alarmism. You said we were trying to create problems where none existed. The memory came back to Zephyrin slowly. There had been reports from human scientists about unusual energy readings beyond the galactic rim. The Council had reviewed them briefly and filed them away. Chancellor Vex had said that humans were always seeing dangers that were not there. What is it? Zephyrin asked. What is coming? We call them the Devourers, Minho said. They are a species that consumes entire civilizations. They strip planets of all life and resources, then move on to the next target. They have destroyed hundreds of galaxies. How do you know this? Because we have been fighting them for 3 years. They reached our galaxy's outer edge 18 months ago. We have been holding them back while we evacuated as many people as possible. Zephyrin stared at the screen in shock. While the galaxy had been tearing itself apart, the humans had been fighting a war against extinction. They had been protecting everyone, even the people who had rejected them. Why did you not tell us? He asked. We tried, Minho said. But you were not listening. And after we left, we realized something important. The galaxy cannot be saved by force. It cannot be saved by technology or weapons or clever strategies. It can only be saved by unity, by cooperation, by species working together instead of fighting each other. The Council is broken, Zephyrin said. Half our members are gone. The rest are at war. There is no unity left. We know, Minho said. That is why we are offering you something else. What? Sanctuary. We have identified 17 systems beyond the galactic rim that can support life. We have been preparing them for evacuation. We can save approximately 2 billion people from each member species. Zephyrin felt hope and despair at the same time. 2 billion people per species was a lot, but it was only a tiny fraction of the galactic population. What about the rest? The rest will depend on whether the remaining council species can learn to work together. If they can put aside their differences and fight as one people, they might have a chance. If they cannot, Minho shrugged, then they will share the fate of the hundreds of civilizations that came before them. Will you help us fight? We will provide transportation to the sanctuary worlds. We will share our defensive technologies, but we will not fight your war for you. This is something the galaxy must do for itself. The transmission ended. Zephyrin sat in silence for a long time, trying to process what he had learned. The humans had known about the threat for 3 years. They had tried to warn everyone. They had been fighting and dying to protect a galaxy that had rejected them. And now they were offering to save as many people as possible, asking for nothing in return. It was the most human thing imaginable. Zephyrin called an emergency council session. Only 8 counselors came. The others were too busy with their own crises to attend. The humans have made contact, he announced. They are offering sanctuary to our people. He explained everything that Minho had told him. The approaching threat, the failed warnings, the offer of evacuation. So the humans were right all along, said Counselor Theron. They saw the danger coming and we ignored them. What do we do now? Asked Counselor Morax. We have 2 choices, Zephyrin said. We can evacuate our people to the human sanctuary, worlds, and abandon the galaxy. Or we can try to unite what is left of our civilization and make a stand. Can we win? I do not know. The humans say it depends on whether we can work together. The counselors looked at each other. They were the representatives of species that had been fighting each other for months. Species that blamed each other for the galaxy's collapse. Species that could barely agree on what day it was, let alone how to fight an existential threat. We have to try, Counselor Theron said finally. We cannot just run away and let the galaxy die. The others agreed. It was probably hopeless, but it was better than giving up without a fight. Over the next 3 months, something remarkable happened. The approaching threat forced the galaxy's remaining species to work together. Old enemies became allies. Ancient grudges were set aside. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to act as one people. It was not easy. There were still arguments and disagreements, but the alternative was extinction, and that was a powerful motivator. The humans kept their promise. They shared their defensive technologies. They provided transportation for civilian evacuations. They sent medical supplies and food to worlds that were struggling, but they did not send soldiers. They did not take command of the defense effort. They made it clear that this was the galaxy's fight to win or lose. When the Devourers finally arrived, the galaxy was as ready as it could be. The defense fleet included ships from every remaining species. The command structure was integrated and unified. The defensive positions were coordinated across thousands of star systems. It still was not enough. The first battles were disasters. The Devourers were stronger, faster, and more ruthless than anyone had imagined. They swept through the outer systems like a plague, destroying everything in their path. But something unexpected happened. Instead of falling apart, the Galactic Alliance grew stronger. Each defeat taught them something new. Each loss brought the species closer together, and slowly, incredibly, they began to fight back. The war lasted 18 months. By the end, both sides were exhausted. The Devourers had been stopped, but at a terrible cost. Half the galaxy's worlds were uninhabitable. Billions of people were dead. Entire civilizations had been wiped out. But the galaxy had survived, and it had done so by working together. In the aftermath, as the survivors began to rebuild, a new message came from the humans. Congratulations, Minho said. You have done something that few civilizations,